Winter is coming. Are you prepared?
You should have a winter storm safety kit in your car.
Learn about steps school districts are taking to keep your kids safe.
I think if you were to ask most superintendents what's the worst decision they have to make, it'll be whether we close school or whether we don't close school.
And ever wonder if animals can really predict the weather?
I think when I see a cow lay down, it means she's comfortable and she has to lay down.
All that and more as the WENY First Warning Weather Team gets you ready for Old Man Winter. Simmons Rockwell GMC and the Brodigan Agency present Winter Watch.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our winter weather special, Winter Watch. I'm Chief Meteorologist Joe Vera.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Craig Flint.
And I'm Ryan Bells.
And we are here at the Harbor Hotel in Watkins Glen talking about winter weather. And guys, what a perfect setting, right?
Trying to stay warm outside here. Going to be a busy next half hour. We're going to talk about all kinds of winter weather topics.
Everything from air quality during the winter months, is it worse, is it better, to even our forecast for the upcoming winter season.
All right, and we've all heard about El Nino and La Nina. What can we expect this winter, and how will it have an impact on you? As we head into the winter season, days continue to get shorter and temperatures drop. This because the sun's rays are shining directly on the southern hemisphere, but ultimately it's the wind patterns and jet stream that shape what kind of winter we'll have. The North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO for short, has a huge impact on our winter conditions. For instance, when we're in a positive NAO pattern, low pressure is more prevalent in the North Atlantic. And when this occurs, our jet stream is more zonal. This is the warmer scenario where our weather has more of a Pacific influence, much like we did last winter. And when we have a negative NAO pattern, there's a blocking area of high pressure over the North Atlantic. And when this type of pattern's in place, we have a more amplified jet stream. Dip in that jet stream allows for colder air to settle south out of Canada, and it's more conducive to Arctic outbreaks, similar to what we had 2 winters ago. Unfortunately, the North Atlantic Oscillation is variable and can only be forecast accurately a few weeks out. So while the NAO does have a large influence on our weather, we have to look to other seasonal patterns for long-range forecasting, such as El Nino and La Nina. Unlike the North Atlantic Oscillation, these two are easier to forecast and remain more constant through the season. El Nino is the warming of the Pacific waters, and they also shift off towards the east. Typically in El Nino winters, we experience above average temperatures across our area of the country, while the southern tier of states typically are wetter with below average temperatures. Also in El Nino years, we have drier conditions throughout the Great Lakes, and this was especially the case last winter when we had a strong El Nino occurring. El Nino episodes generally last about a year and occur every 2 to 6 years. Now, La Nina is the cooling of the waters of the central and eastern tropical Pacific, and this too results in a shift in wind and weather patterns. Typically during a La Nina winter, we get a dip in the northern branch of the jet stream, and that will result in cooler than average temperatures across the northern tier of states, also a bit stormier as well, while the southern tier of states are a little bit drier and warmer. Turns out we're currently shifting towards a La Nina, which would favor a more typical cold and snowy winter for us. So there you go. There's a lot to look at when it comes to winter weather forecasting.
And you can always count on us to be there ahead of the storm to keep you informed.
Absolutely. So what can we expect as we go into this winter weather season? We sat down and talked to meteorologists at both the National Weather Service and Northeast Regional Climate Center to get their take. Before we give you our take on the upcoming winter, it's important to understand what helped cause the unseasonably mild conditions last year and whether or not a similar pattern is currently in place.
Last winter was not a typical winter for here in upstate New York. It was very warm, and a lot of what was impacting last winter was the strong El Nino. It was one of the strongest El Ninos on record, rivaled the El Nino of 1998. And so that was, because it was so strong, it really impacted our weather, and we were very mild. So our temperatures were so warm that the precipitation that we did get, most of it fell as rain rather than snow.
So while a number of factors helped contribute to the mild 2015-2016 winter, the main weather player was El Nino. Typically, El Nino events are rather short-lived and last for about a year or so before fading.
Well, that's completely gone this year. So, in fact, we're actually trending towards the other phase of that cycle, towards the La Nina, which is totally different. And we're going to see more snow, and we're going to see more of a typical southern tier winter.
Another pattern forecasters look at is the North Atlantic Oscillation.
And lately it's been on the cold phase. And there are some studies that suggest that when it's in the cold phase in October, which it predominantly was, it would last into the winter.
So as we push closer to the winter weather season, it's important to prepare now. An easy way is to keep a winter weather preparedness kit in your car. As snow and ice affect road conditions, motorists, often at no fault of their own, find themselves in less than desirable situations.
You might be the perfect driver. You're driving along, you're going slow, you're safe. Now there's an accident on the interstate a half mile up. Now you're stopped. And you have no idea when that highway's going to open up, and you're stranded, and it's 15 degrees out, the wind's blowing. What do? You don't think about that situation and how bad it is until you're in it.
Key items you should have handy in your trunk just in case you find yourself stranded include blankets, water, and a cell phone.
Yeah, being prepared is crucial, and after the break, I sat down with local school officials to see how they keep your kids safe during the winter season.
Hey, welcome back to our show. Thanks for being here. Of course, we appreciate you tuning in. And we just heard Joe talk about El Nino and La Nina and La Nada and all that science stuff. But you know, there are a bunch of school children that want to know about snow days, right?
I always look forward to those, didn't you?
Exactly. So we sent you out on the road to talk to some school officials.
Yeah, that's for sure. I sat down with a bunch of school officials, learned about some techniques that they have to keep the children safe during the winter months and the preparation that goes into it well before the winter months. So let's take a look.
You can see at the bottom of your screen closings and delays, mostly delays 2 hours this morning, all because of those slick roads.
Yeah, it came pretty quickly yesterday afternoon.
Snow, sleet, and freezing rain, bus drivers have to deal with all sorts of elements during the winter season. I know you've enjoyed that 2-hour delay this morning, but it's made for a difficult morning for school officials. Come aboard and let's go to school. And sit down with Northern Tioga School District Superintendent Diana Barnes. It's the night before school, the morning of school, or even during the school day, and the snow has begun to fall. What now?
If the snow is falling that night, I will share with you that the superintendents in the area start communication, and it stays and goes all night long. We'll certainly keep an eye on the weather. If they're still forecasting snow by the next morning, we will cancel school for the next day. If it's in the morning and snow continues to fall, and we might not know that that's going to happen, but it starts to happen, then we'll have to have an early closing, and we start that process.
From rural Tioga County, Pennsylvania, to the edge of Seneca Lake, the districts have to be prepared.
We definitely have days where here in town it will be like today. It's wet, it's damp, it's cold. When you get up on the hilltops and even on the upper hilltops as you go heading towards Ithaca, you have quite a variance where we may not have any snow down here. They might have 8 or 9 inches of snow up there.
Which means they need to be prepared for?
Anything and everything, from not thinking the snow was coming in to getting out in the middle of the route and all of a sudden it's snowing and you can't see off the front of the nose.
But advances in technology help combat that.
When they come up onto an area of road that might not be plowed yet or has some slush on it, they can drop the chains to gain traction. We live in such a valley area, hill and valley area, that they get used a lot.
So the decision ultimately comes down to you?
Yes, sir, it does. I think if you were to ask most superintendents what's the worst decision they have to make, it'll be whether we close school or whether we don't close school.
But what's the worst they've seen that they should be prepared for?
I was actually a teacher at the time, and we had a very heavy snowstorm. I think we got over 36 inches, all right, and the school system was shut down for 3 days in a row.
We were under a winter storm warning. The snow came in like gangbusters about 10 o'clock that night. Reached out to people, said let's get it on the 11 o'clock news so parents know. Woke up at 6 o'clock that morning and there was no snow. But again, better safe than sorry.
A large majority of students look forward to snow days, but school officials have a different consensus.
For me, my morning starts about 3:30, 4 o'clock.
it is much more stressful than a regular day.
It's a double-edged sword. For me, it's definitely an early morning, and it's a long day if we go to school. It's also one of those things where if we don't get the call right, we're in trouble either way.
How do we do this and do it well together? It's the only way we can do it. 323 square miles is a lot of territory, and we want to do it to the best of our ability so that we can provide, for the individuals who live within our district. That's important to us.
For the latest on school closings and delays throughout the winter season, be sure to stick with WENY News on air and online.
Hey, we've all heard about animals and their senses when it comes to weather, right? Well, we decided to come up to Tanglewood Nature Center with Bridget and Sophie. We're talking about those senses, and we're going to find out if animals can predict weather coming up.
Welcome back to WENY's Winter Special, Winter Watch. I'm Chief Meteorologist Joe Veras. We're shifting gears a bit now and looking at non-traditional forecasting techniques. Who better to go to than Craig Flint? Here's more.
Alrighty, thanks, Joe. And we've all heard the claims that animals can forecast the weather somehow. Crickets chirping faster as the temperature increases, but that one's true. Frogs croaking louder as bad weather approaches. And then, of course, there's this guy. In February, Punxsutawney Phil emerges from his hole in the ground to give us his prognostication. But can animals really forecast weather?
Animals absolutely pick up on things like the changing daylight. It impacts their circadian rhythms. It changes what they do in their day-to-day. They can understand that the sunlight is shifting. They can certainly feel the temperature changing. They can notice humidity changes over time.
So what about cows? Can they predict the weather? Dr. Tom Overton of Cornell University.
I'm sure they notice changes in temperature. They're going to notice changes in humidity. They'll notice changes in day length. They're going to notice changes in sunlight versus cloudy. Now, whether they can actually predict the weather, how much awareness beyond that, I think it's a great question.
Of course, there's the old saying, cows lying down, weather on the way. Does that mean it's really going to rain? Dr. Overton has a different and much more commonsensical opinion.
I think when I see a cow lay down, it means she's comfortable and she wants to lay down.
Then there are birds. Can they predict weather? According to Paul Curtis, a professor and wildlife specialist at Cornell University, birds will take advantage of the wind and where the weather fronts are. For example, if there's a front coming in from the north with strong wind speeds, birds will ride those fronts and take advantage of the tailwinds they provide so they can go further distances with less energy. But
we might see animals migrating, for example. We know winter is coming, but that's not going to tell you it's going to snow tomorrow just because you see geese migrating south.
While it's no secret that animals do have really keen senses, and that may in fact allow them to pick up on things sooner than we humans can, the bottom line here is there's no clear-cut answer as to whether or not animals can actually forecast a coming storm.
I personally would not go get a raincoat out of my car if I happen to see a cow lie down in a field.
All right, Craig, I guess our jobs are safe. I was a little worried at first, but
Fluffy coming in.
I think we're okay. Can a cow tell us how much snow we're going to get?
No, and that's the takeaway. While there has been all that folklore over the years, it's not something to be thrown away. I mean, there's evidence of it. But the bottom line is you can't really rely on animals to forecast the weather.
In quotes.
Yeah.
All right. Where'd Ryan go?
Oh, that's right. Where did he go? Ryan? Ryan?
Hello there, Twin Tiers. If you're wondering where I'm at, I'm in the happiest of all valleys, Happy Valley, better known as State College, Pennsylvania, home to the Penn State Nittany Lions.
We are Penn State! We are Penn State!
As well as the Penn State Air Quality Forecast Office. During the winter months, the chance of becoming sick, especially with a respiratory illness, increases.
If your respiratory system is at all compromised, so asthma conditions, if you have any kind of pulmonary problem, yes, it'll get worse because your lungs simply can't stay clean.
It's all due to the air being denser during the winter and less mixing of air particles occurring.
Well, in the winter, the main thing is how much mixing is going to occur during the day. If it's really windy, then the stuff diffuses over a very wide region, so it's not so bad. But if there's no wind, then you're sitting there.
High pressure normally means fair weather, but for air quality, it's a different story.
Yeah, well, if it remains stationary overhead, usually what's happening is it's getting warmer aloft, but in the valleys with the long nights, you get cold weather draining into the valleys at night. It sets up a strong temperature inversion, and that prevents local emissions from dispersing.
Is this trend projected to continue?
That's a good question. That's a good question, and the answer is probably yes. As we move away from coal combustion for our electrical generating units, you'll see less sulfur and nitrate in the atmosphere, so we'll continue downward. As the fleet turns over and we have cleaner cars on the road, you'll also see that reduce as well.
So the worst months for air quality are?
December, January, February.
So the winter months?
Yeah.
Because of that inversion?
Because of that, yeah.
Staying in State College, let's travel a few minutes down the road. State College, Pennsylvania is home to the global forecast headquarters for AccuWeather. Let's take a step inside and see what they're predicting for the upcoming winter season.
Well, this winter is going to be a little bit different from last year. From northern Pennsylvania to southern New York was in a snow drought. Basically missed every storm that seemed to come our way.
Last winter's warmth and ultimate lack of snowfall sort of surprised some meteorologists. So to come up with this year's forecast, it's important to look back before looking ahead.
You also have to look at what's been going on persistence-wise over the last couple of seasons. Droughts, wet areas, those things have influence on our forecast as well.
So now it's time. What are they predicting for this winter?
Yeah, here at AccuWeather, we put out a forecast at the end of September, early October. That's our initial forecast. And then we update that forecast by November because the forecasting models start to get a little bit more confidence in them, and we start to see better trends. What we did see on these the latest update is that kind of a warmer trend here to December. We're not seeing the cold rushing down because it's on the other side of the globe right now. We should get more snow than we did last year. The thing is I think the systems will come more frequent. When we get into the heart of the season, we'll see less gaps in snow events, so more frequency. They may not be the huge big hitters, but I think we'll have a couple big storms in between.
But really, how confident can they be this far out?
Last year, it was a very strong signal. If you have a strong signal, then the confidence is there for your forecast to rely on that signal. This year, we know whether it's neutral or La Nina, it's a weaker signal.
So the confidence level compared to last year isn't really there. While I was in town, I wanted to get another opinion and went over to my alma mater, the Penn State Department of Meteorology, to see what their thoughts are.
Last winter, of course, was historic, at least the first part of it. December was so wildly warm, not just around the local area, but nationwide. It was a December to remember.
So is the warmth gone?
The idea, though, is that the El Nino is gone. So we're not going to be overwhelming the globe with warmth from the tropical waters. There is a lag as far as when you start to see the downstream effects of the El Nino being gone. So much of this fall, at least on this side, on our side of the North Pole, we've still been dominated by warmth. And it looks to continue, and if that's the case, we're going to have a hard time building up the snowpack early here.
However, Ben believes as we dig deeper into the season, the pattern should reverse.
I think the easy forecast is that it's going to be colder than last year and there's going to be more snow because it's hard to be warmer than one of the warmest on record and less snowy than one of the least snowy on record. I do think that it's going to be, when all is said and done, not far from average.
And, okay, I suppose we have to mention the polar vortex.
The polar vortex, which is always up near the poles, it just happened to gain recent attention. The polar vortex this late fall season has actually been in a very weak state. And when the polar vortex is in a weak state, it's susceptible to get dislodged. And for October and much of November, that polar vortex has been dislodged, but it's been dislodged over toward the Eurasian continent. Parts of Russia and Siberia have been 40 or 50 degrees below normal for several weeks now, which is incredible.
The question is will that change? And that's the big mystery. That's the big key player. We do think that as we get towards the middle and latter part of the season, that will shift a little bit and will come occasionally down. Not plan itself down, but come down, and that will bring us to cold shots.
Reporting in State College, Ryan Bells, WENY News.
Thanks, Ryan. Up next, the three of us are back to give you our take on what to expect this winter weather season. Welcome back to WENY's Winter Special, Winter Watch. Guys, the time has come.
Uh-oh. It has. Everybody's been looking forward to it.
All right, we need to figure out what
Or
we
at least
can expect. Try our best to figure out what's going to happen this winter weather season. And there are signs pointing in a certain direction. We've learned about this over the last several minutes, and we do realize we're heading into a La Nina weather pattern. And typically in those type of situations, it's a more typical winter for us here in the Twin Tiers.
Definitely nothing like last year.
It's going to feel a lot colder than what we had last year.
Anything's going to be worse than last year.
Right. And normally, in the Elmira area, we average 40, 45 inches of snow. Last year, we had half of that. So we think we're going to double that for the upcoming winter. I'm thinking near average temperature, so seasonably cold. And I'm forecasting snowfall amounts right around 45, 46 inches.
Now, I got to tell you, this, we have a hard enough time with the 7-day forecast sometimes, and we're predicting 3 months into, you do, we're predicting 3 months into the future. So meteorological winter, December, Jan, Feb, all right? So we're on tape right now. We'll see if we're right. But I do think as we head, especially into the first half of the winter, there's going to be a lot of variability. So we might get a warm day or two followed by an outbreak of cold. So kind of still this roller coaster temperature ride, trending towards colder as we head into Jan and Feb. And I think snowfall wise, average 44, 45. I'll go about 46 or 47, Ryan.
Okay, I'm going to up you.
He's going to trump us all.
Rolling the dice. I'm going to trump both of you.
Okay.
50 to 55.
He's risky.
Oh, wow.
I am.
Okay.
And
Well,
slightly below average, but I think the slightly below average we'll have that during the January and February timeframe. I think much of December is going to be a little bit warmer.
Okay, there you go. Bottom line, we're thinking a seasonably cold winter and snowfall near normal, perhaps slightly above.
Well, this was fun.
I had a lot of fun, and you know what?
Around
We're
the
going to do
fire?
it again in the spring when we talk about severe weather season. But
Okay.
for the time being, we're heading into the winter months. We want to thank you so much for joining us for our winter weather special.
And don't forget, we are on all the social, Facebook, Twitter. You can find our forecasts online and on air. And before we go, again, a quick thanks to Watkins Glen Harbor Hotel. Beautiful spot. Got to come check it out. Thanks for letting us do it here, guys.
Like you mentioned, on air and online, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We are there for you. Thanks for tuning in for this year's Winter Watch.
All right, have a great night.
Good night.
Special thanks goes out to Simmons Rockwell, GMC, and the Brodigan Agency.